What if I told you that the Ark of the Covenant, the most sacred artifact in the entire Bible, may not have been destroyed, and that enigmatic clues spread across the ancient world point to places where it could be hidden to this day? It seems like something out of a movie, but the evidence you will now see is real. Some have even been ignored for centuries. But why? The Ark of the Covenant was not just a sacred box. She carried the tablets of the law, represented the presence of God among the people, and was the center of battles, prophecies, and spiritual power in the Old Testament. When it disappeared, along with Solomon's temple, one of humanity's greatest mysteries was established. Where is she now? Was it taken secretly to Ethiopia, hidden deep in a cave at Qumran, or buried under the rubble of Jerusalem, before the eyes of the world and far from our reach? What you discover now may surprise you. There are maps, ancient texts, historical accounts, and even archaeological evidence that suggests specific routes and hiding places for the Ark. Interestingly, this data has been avoided by many people, and there are those who say that there is a silent effort to keep this secret away from the public. Why? What would happen if the Ark of the Covenant was actually found today? What would be the spiritual, religious, and even political impact of this revelation? Stay with me until the end, because some of this information is not easily found. And you will understand why this mystery still shakes the faith of millions, generates intense debates among scholars, and keeps archaeologists in incessant search for decades. Just imagine. What if the Bible had already left clear clues, but no one saw it because we were looking in the wrong place? Prepare to dive into a journey that will cross continents, challenge popular beliefs, and uncover hidden details that could change everything we know about this sacred artifact. And it is exactly from here that the mystery begins to reveal itself. As the dust of time covers secrets that may be right before our eyes, we can't help but wonder, what if we are closer than ever to rediscovering the Ark of the Covenant? Do biblical accounts hide geographic codes? Or perhaps ancient traditions have preserved this secret in silence, waiting for the right moment to come to light? If this topic makes sense to you, leave here in the comments what has touched you most so far. Do you believe the Ark still exists? Where do you think she might be? Sharing your opinion can open up new perspectives for those who are also looking for answers. And besides, and I speak from the heart, your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this type of content. When you comment, like, and subscribe, you are helping to keep this investigation alive and allowing more people to connect with the biblical story in a deep and real way. So if something here aroused your curiosity or made your faith vibrate, click the like button and subscribe to the channel. Here, each video is a new journey among the ruins of the Bible, the echoes of faith, and the mysteries that time has tried to erase. Together, let's put together this ancient puzzle. And speaking of puzzles, you will now see one of the most enigmatic. Reports about the possible route of the Ark, hidden in an ancient text that few know about. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because this is not just a story about a sacred object lost in time. It's about identity, transformation, and a search that spans generations. The truth is, when we talk about the Ark of the Covenant, we are not just exploring a relic. We are touching on something that, for many, represents the very presence of God on earth, a bridge between the visible and the invisible, between the past and the spiritual destiny of humanity. And that is precisely what makes this journey so powerful. Because if the Ark still exists, then everything it symbolizes, covenant, promise, divine authority, also lives on. And perhaps it is closer to us than we ever imagined. Have you ever stopped to think about how strong this connection is? How many times throughout our lives do we come across the feeling that there is something bigger guiding us, but we still feel like there is a missing piece of the puzzle? The Ark represents this hidden piece. She is the perfect metaphor for that which is hidden but never lost, something that requires faith, courage, and a willingness to look beyond the surface. There are those who say that the ancients knew much, more than what they wrote down, and that the behind-the-scenes of this story involve secret decisions, ancient pacts, and even attempts to hide the truth for fear of the impact it could cause. When a symbol has the power to alter beliefs, challenge empires, and provoke a mass transformation of mentality, it is natural that it ends up shrouded in mystery, silence, and theories. Among these theories, one of the most intriguing points to Ethiopia, a sacred place guarded by monks who claim to have protected the Ark for centuries, in an isolated chapel where no visitors are allowed to enter. They say she is there, alive, radiating an inexplicable energy. The curious thing is that witness reports, rare and courageous, speak of something that emits light and heat, even without electricity. Are there records? Few. Solid evidence? Almost none. But the faith and mystery that surround this place continue to resist time and doubt. Other scholars believe that the Ark's true root was sealed among the rubble of Solomon's ancient temple. And then comes a detail that completely changes the logic of what most people think. Beneath the Temple Mount, there are underground tunnels excavated more than 2,000 years ago. Many were explored secretly, and some have never been opened. To this day, why? What's down there that can't yet be shown? These sites are considered sensitive, and any excavation generates international tension. We are talking about Jerusalem, a city where religion, politics, and power intersect like nowhere else on the planet. It is in this type of environment that secrets tend to hide most strongly, not because there is no interest, but because there are too many interests. And if we go even further, there is a line that connects the Ark of the Covenant with the ancient caves of Qumran in the Judean desert, the same place where the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, housing biblical texts thousands of years old. Some scholars suggest that the Essenes, a secret community of Jews, may have hidden the Ark there, along with other temple treasures, when Jerusalem was invaded by the Babylonians. There are maps, coded clues, and even lists of lost sacred objects that mention a golden vessel with manna and a sacred object with wings. Coincidence? This narrative leads us to question, what do we really know about the behind-the-scenes of faith? How much did they tell us? And what is still being kept silent for fear of what might happen if the truth comes out? These questions are not simple. They poke at wounds, stir deep beliefs, and open space for new interpretations. But that's precisely why it's worth continuing. Because those who seek revelations need to be willing to face the discomfort of doubt, to find the light of understanding. Comment there. I'm on this journey too, and we will continue unraveling layer by layer what may be about to be revealed. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject. Because the more we investigate, the more we realize that the story of the Ark of the Covenant is like a maze of hidden revelations, decisions made behind the scenes of faith, and secrets preserved by generations who perhaps had much more to lose than to gain by bringing the truth to light. The Bible presents us with the Ark in fascinating and symbolic details. In Exodus 25, for example, God instructs Moses with surgical precision on how to build it. Acacia wood, overlaid with pure gold, with 2 cherubim at its ends, forming what was called a mercy seat, the place of divine presence. It was there that God communicated with Moses, between the cherubim. The Ark, therefore, was not just a sacred object. It was the meeting point between heaven and earth. A spiritual portal. An instrument of revelation. Now, imagine the impact this artifact had. In all the Old Testament battles where the Ark was taken, there were miraculous victories. But there were also severe warnings. Anyone who approached her without permission died. In 2 Samuel 6, Uzzah reached out his hand to catch her when the oxen stumbled, and instantly fell dead. This shows us that it was not just symbolism. There was something real there. Energy, holiness, literal presence of God. This is one of the questions that echoes to this day. Over time, the Ark became the spiritual center of Israel. It was kept in the most holy place of the temple, and only the high priest could approach it, once a year. But then came the siege. The Babylonians invaded Jerusalem and destroyed the first temple. From then on, the trace of the ark simply disappears from the biblical narrative. In 2 Chronicles 35, King Josiah orders her to be returned to the temple, but after this episode, there is absolute silence. No later verse reports its destruction. No text states that it was looted, just gone. And it is precisely this silence that generates more questions than answers. Because unlike other sacred objects that were taken by enemies, such as candelabra, vases, and manuscripts, the ark was not listed among the spoils. This leads us to wonder, did someone hide it before the invasion? Could it be possible that the priests, realizing the imminent destruction of Jerusalem, acted in secret to protect the greatest symbol of the divine presence? This theory is one of the most accepted among religious scholars and archaeologists. There are apocryphal manuscripts, such as the second book of Maccabees, that talk about the prophet Jeremiah hiding the ark in a cave on Mount Nebo, the same place where Moses would have contemplated the promised land before he died. According to this account, the hiding place was sealed and never found again. Other scholars point to records in the Talmud, which suggest that the ark was hidden on the orders of King Josiah in a secret chamber built beneath the temple in anticipation of the invasion. This would explain why, even after the reconstruction of the temple in the period of Ezra and Nehemiah, the ark was never placed back in its original place. The Holy of Holies was empty, as if what was once the beating heart of faith had been deliberately taken from the scene, waiting for the right moment. And this leads us to a deeper reflection. What would happen if the ark were found again today? What would be the psychological, religious, and political impact? Would we be facing a change in collective mentality, or would the modern world ignore a symbol that it no longer understands? There are even those who say that the simple announcement of the location of the ark could trigger conflicts between nations, as its return would be directly linked to the reconstruction of the Third Temple, according to some prophetic interpretations. These possibilities are real, and that is what makes this search so charged with tension and at the same time with hope. There is an emotional weight to all of this. We're not just talking about archaeology. We are talking about faith, spiritual identity, something that has shaped entire civilizations, and that can even today reconfigure everything we believe. We know about the divine. Comment there. That makes sense to me. And let's continue to decipher together this mystery that spans centuries. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because when we begin to piece together the fragments of archaeological evidence, historical accounts, and silent testimonies, something surprising begins to emerge from the shadows of time. The search for the Ark of the Covenant is not just a religious curiosity. It is in fact an investigation that crosses borders, involving cultures, governments, and even secret agents. Yes, there are those who say that this enigma is not only in the hands of theologians and scholars, but also of people who operate behind the scenes, trying to prevent certain truths from coming to light. One of the places that generates the most heated debates is Aksum in Ethiopia. There, in a small chapel surrounded by high walls and guarded 24 hours a day, monks claim to protect the true Ark of the Covenant. Their history is not recent. According to Ethiopian tradition, recorded in the ancient book Kebra Nagast, the Ark was taken to the country by the son of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, Menelik III, and has remained on African soil ever since. The guardian of the Ark, a monk chosen to never leave the chapel, dedicates his entire life to silence, prayer, and the protection of what he claims to be the most sacred object in the history of humanity. No modern researcher has ever had direct access to the Ark, but what makes this theory so intriguing is the fact that several Ethiopian religious leaders and even politicians treat this story with absolute seriousness. More than a myth, it is part of the country's spiritual identity. On some occasions, visitors have reported strange sensations near the chapel: intense heat, light that seems to pulse even at night, and a silence that cannot be explained simply by respect for the place. The absence of material evidence, interestingly, does not diminish the conviction of those who live there. For many, this solid faith is itself a type of evidence. But Ethiopia is far from the only candidate. When archaeologists began exploring the Qumran region in the Judean desert and found the Dead Sea Scrolls, a new line of investigation was opened. Some of these manuscripts mention hidden sacred objects, among them gold and silver artifacts that belonged to Solomon's temple. There is a document known as the Copper Scroll that lists, with almost surgical precision, dozens of places where treasures were buried for protection. One such site is described as a deep chamber north of Mount Gerizim, sealed with stones and protected by sacred signs. This led many to speculate. Could this be the hiding place of the Ark? The search for this chamber took decades, and to this day no one has been able to confirm its exact location. But the simple fact that there are ancient maps, astronomical calculations and coordinates recorded with such zeal shows that there was something very valuable being protected, something that transcended gold or silver. We are talking about a symbol that carried divine authority and that could, according to sacred texts, be the key to the manifestation of God himself among men. Another point that raises suspicion is beneath the ground in Jerusalem. Literally. The underground tunnels that cut through the area of the ancient Solomon's temple are now inaccessible to the general public. Archaeological excavations carried out there in the 1970s and 1980s found narrow corridors, sealed chambers, and markings dating back to the Second Temple period. But suddenly, the research was interrupted, officially for political and international security reasons. Unofficially, some say that excavators came too close to something they weren't supposed to find. Imagine the impact this would have. An artifact that could alter the geopolitics of the Middle East, provoke global religious disputes, and reopen ancient wounds. For some, this is precisely the reason to keep it hidden. After all, the revelation of the Ark would bring spiritual consequences, but also delicate decisions. The reconstruction of the temple, for example, is one of the most sensitive expectations among Orthodox Jews. For them, the presence of the Ark would be confirmation that the Messianic era is at hand. To other religious groups, this would sound like a harbinger of the end times. This duality between faith and tension, hope and fear, makes the Ark not only an object of worship, but also a symbol of power. And powerful symbols always attract dangerous looks. Therefore, many scholars argue that it may never be completely revealed, at least not until the world is ready for the impact it would make. The most interesting thing is that even as the centuries passed, the Ark never disappeared from the collective consciousness. In each generation, new clues, new voices emerge. It's as if she were alive, pulsing somewhere, waiting for the right moment. A wait that is not just physical, but spiritual. A call to transform our mentality. An invitation to the journey, right there. I feel this calling, and let's continue exploring what could be the greatest spiritual discovery of the last 2,000 years. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject, because there is a surprising twist that completely changes the direction of everything that has been said so far. For years, the focus of the searches was outside Jerusalem, theories that pointed to Ethiopia, the Qumran Desert, or even hiding places in the mountains of Jordan. But what if the Ark of the Covenant had never left Jerusalem? It seems unlikely, even too unlikely. But it is precisely this improbability that supports one of the most impactful and controversial hypotheses of recent times. Some currents within Orthodox Judaism, especially among rabbis linked to the study of the temple, maintain that the Ark is still exactly where it should be, in the hidden depths of Solomon's ancient temple, today under the dome of the rock. Yes, right there, on the Temple Mount, right in the center of one of the most sensitive places on the planet, beneath one of the most sacred Islamic monuments in the world. According to these reports, which have been passed down from generation, to generation within very restricted circles. Before the destruction of the temple by the Babylonians, priests knew that the attack was imminent, and they made a decision that would alter the course of history. They sealed the Ark in an underground chamber, purposely built beneath the Holy of Holies, a kind of spiritual vault designed precisely to protect what was most sacred. The entrance was hidden. The accesses collapsed with stones and sand, and the records? Hidden for fear of persecution, destruction, or desecration. This version is supported, albeit discreetly, by some Israeli scholars who investigate the temple archives. There are also scattered reports of rabbis who, in the 40s and 50s, would have had access to ancient documents preserved by priestly lineages. One of these documents was rumored to contain a plan with underground markings indicating the existence of compartments beneath the current platform of the Temple Mount. Interestingly, these same areas remain inaccessible to this day. Officially, for reasons of security and religious sensitivity. Unofficially, for fear of what might be found. And here comes an even more delicate point. The Dome of the Rock, although it is an Islamic sanctuary, is located exactly on the sacred rock where the altar of Solomon's temple would have been. It is there that, according to Jewish tradition, Abraham almost sacrificed Isaac, and it is precisely there, say temple scholars, that there would be the entrance to the compartment where the Ark has rested in silence for more than 2 millennia. Now imagine the impact of a discovery of this magnitude. If the Ark is revealed, there, at that exact point, we would be facing a global transformation. The rediscovery of the Ark could trigger the reconstruction of the Third Temple, as many have been waiting for generations. But, at the same time, it could trigger conflicts of unpredictable proportions, as this would involve changes in the most disputed place between the 3 largest monotheistic religions in the world. A hidden truth, loaded with spiritual and explosive potential. This theory is not just loose speculation. In 1982, a rabbi named Yehuda Getz, who was responsible for the Western Wall tunnels, publicly stated that he knew the exact location of the Ark. According to him, there was a secret passage that had been identified during excavations underground in the Western Wall, leading to a sealed chamber directly beneath the temple platform. And the most shocking thing, he said that he heard sounds coming from the other side of the stone wall, as if there was a presence there. After this declaration, the tunnels were closed by order of the authorities. Since then, there have been no more excavations in that particular area. This kind of revelation doesn't make the headlines. It circulates in restricted circles, in veiled documents, in testimonies that mix faith, fear, and mystery. And therein lies the crux. The Ark's true. Secret may not just lie in its physical location, but in the conscious decision not to reveal it. Because perhaps those who know exactly where it is understand that the world is not yet prepared to deal with the spiritual, political, and prophetic impact that this discovery would cause. But this hypothesis, surprising as it may be, awakens a curious feeling that the secret has never been so close, literally under our feet. The tension between the known and the unrevealed. Faith confronted by evidence. Time dividing the before and after of a possible reunion with the most sacred symbol of the covenant between God and his people. Comment there, this changes everything, and let's continue together unearthing the layers of this mystery that perhaps never stopped beating at the heart of history. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because if everything we are exploring is true, if the Ark of the Covenant really is stored away, intact, waiting for the right moment to be revealed, then perhaps we are not just facing a historical relic, but on the brink of an unprecedented spiritual turning point, a prophetic transformation capable of touching not only religious traditions, but the very structure of our perception of time, purpose, and destiny. Think with me. What if the discovery of the Ark was precisely the trigger for a new stage in human history? There are biblical passages that point to this scenario with frightening precision. In Revelation 11:19, for example, it is written, "Then the temple of God, which is in heaven, was opened, and the ark of his covenant was seen in his temple." This vision is not just symbolic. For many scholars, this is a literal event that will mark the beginning of a new era. A revelation that, when it comes to light, will require a new mindset to understand. And here, the question that echoes is not just, where is the ark, but are we ready for the impact this revelation would cause? Because it's not just about finding an object, it's about what he represents. It is the restoration of a sacred link between the divine and humanity, confirmation that everything promised is being fulfilled. There are rabbis in Jerusalem who, in a restrained tone, are already talking about the preparations for the reconstruction of the Third Temple. Institutions like the Temple Institute have already recreated sacred utensils, priests' clothing, and even rituals, all according to the patterns described in the Old Testament. They are just waiting for a sign, and for many, that sign is the Ark. If it appears, even if not publicly, it could change the decisions of religious leaders, provoke diplomatic moves, and rekindle prophecies that long ago seemed just part of the past. And the most impressive thing is that, in many circles, this expectation is already alive. The silence, the interrupted excavations, the restricted areas, all of this could be part of something much bigger, much more coordinated than we can realize. But the impact would not just be on Israel. The entire world would feel the effects. After all, the Ark is mentioned in Jewish, Christian, and even Islamic traditions. It does not belong to a nation, but represents a universal promise. Its rediscovery would place believers and skeptics, rulers and pilgrims, scholars and seekers side by side, all faced with the same question. What does this revelation mean for us now? And if we go beyond geographic boundaries and delve into the prophetic dimension, everything begins to connect. The time we live in is marked by signs, crises, divisions, spiritual displacements, an increase in the search for meaning. The Ark, in this context, would not just be a proof of the past, but a call to the future, a kind of spiritual catalyst, prepared to reappear exactly when humanity is faced with decisions that define directions, moral, existential, collective. The truth hidden for centuries may be about to reveal itself, and with it, the weight of the prophecies that speak of restoration, judgment, and reconciliation. It is as if history is folding in on itself, like a prophecy that begins to echo at an increasingly loud volume, demanding attention, discernment, and courage to face what lies ahead. Because the impact would not just be political, it would be internal, it would be in the spirit. In the depths of each person, when looking at the Ark, they would not only see gold and wood, but the memory of a covenant, of a divine commitment, of a calling that perhaps is still alive. A call to return to the center of faith, to the original purpose, to the starting point of our spiritual journey. Right there. I feel this time coming. And let's continue to unravel together what could be one of the most important chapters of our generation. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because when we talk about the Ark of the Covenant, we are not just trying to discover a point on the map. We're tapping into something that goes far beyond archaeology or recorded history. We're tapping into a kind of collective spiritual memory, as if every person listening to this story feels, in some way, that they are connected to it. And perhaps this is the strongest point of all this. The Ark does not just awaken curiosity about the past, but something more intimate, almost like a calling. It is curious to see how different cultures, traditions, and beliefs, even those that have never met historically, have their own versions of an ark, a sacred object that represents the connection between the human and the divine. This suggests that the idea of the Ark of the Covenant is not just a symbol of the people of Israel, but a universal archetype, something engraved in humanity's collective unconscious, something that speaks directly to our thirst for meaning, for truth, for reunion with the sacred. And when this story comes up again, as it is now, it naturally provokes a reaction. Some people are enchanted, others doubt. Many get emotional, but no one remains indifferent. Because the question that hangs in the air is profound. What if all this is real? What if the Ark still exists, intact, waiting for the right moment to be revealed? What if it has already been located, but kept secret due to strategic, spiritual, or political decisions? These possibilities are not just speculations. They are bridges that connect past, present, and future. And it is at this point in the journey that I want to invite you to be part of the conversation. Because each person who participates, who comments, who shares their vision or doubt, helps to put together this puzzle. Sometimes a simple opinion brings to light a new line of thought, a new hypothesis, a new key. So, with complete freedom and sincerity, I want to ask you, what do you feel when you hear all this? Do you believe the Ark is still among us? And if so, where do you think it might be hidden? Is it really in Ethiopia, protected in silence by monks who have consecrated their lives to secrecy? Is it buried under the rubble of the temple in a place where no one can dig? Or is it beyond physical reach, protected in another dimension, guarded by a greater purpose than we can now understand? These questions open space for something valuable: dialogue. Because more than trying to impose an answer, the most transformative thing is when we allow ourselves to question together. And that's the beauty of exploring mysteries like this. Everyone sees a part, everyone carries a piece. And when we put everything on the table, together, the scenario begins to take shape. Perhaps this is one of the hidden functions of the Ark itself, to remind us that truth is not built alone, that there is value in listening, in exchange, in collective reflection. That each vision, no matter how different it may seem, can reveal a facet that was invisible until then. And that's why I want to hear you too. Comment there, I believe. If this content touched something inside you, be it a memory, an old doubt, or even an intuition that something very big is about to happen. Let's continue on this journey, together, because what is being revealed is still just beginning. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because, as unbelievable as it may seem, there are recent reports, discreet, little publicized, and often discredited at first sight, that suggest that the Ark of the Covenant may not only exist, but may have already been seen in the 20th century. And most impressively, by people with spiritual authority and access to areas where almost no one enters. Hushed reports, carefully kept out of the spotlight, but when connected, form an unsettling mosaic of coincidences. Or perhaps, revelations not yet understood. There are unofficial documents, verbal records, testimonies protected by oaths of silence that indicate that the Ark may have been located, at least partially, during restricted excavations beneath the Temple Mount. At specific moments in recent history, mainly after wars and restructuring in Jerusalem, gaps emerged, small windows of opportunity, where experts in biblical archaeology, rabbis of priestly lineage, and even members of Israeli security forces would have had access to areas sealed for millennia. One such report comes from a source linked to the Central Rabbinate of Israel. According to this narrative, during monitoring work in one of the underground tunnels, a team would have found a structure similar to a sealed sanctuary. It was not an ordinary room. Details described included carved columns, ancient inscriptions, and a strange glow coming from within, as if there was a presence there. One of those involved, without entering the place, just looked inside and walked away in silence. Shortly afterwards, the accesses were closed, and it was never officially talked about again. What makes this report gain even more weight is that, shortly afterwards, religious leaders began to intensify studies on the reconstruction of the temple, as if something had been confirmed, even if silently. as if someone inside already knew that what was promised was never lost. Now imagine the impact of a discovery like this. Not in a temple, not in a distant cave, but right beneath our feet. In a place where prayers are said daily, where walls have been built and torn down for centuries, where three religions converge around the same sacred space. A living ark, silent witness to the eternal covenant between God and humanity, resting in secret, waiting for a generation that is ready, spiritually, emotionally, morally, to receive it. But this also raises another question. What if it isn't revealed in plain sight? What if the truth doesn't come through headlines, but through personal transformation? Because, deep down, perhaps the journey through the Ark of the Covenant is more than a search for an object. Perhaps it is a call to recover within us what has been forgotten. Commitment, presence, reverence, the awareness that there is something greater governing history, and that this something is alive, attentive, waiting for the response of whoever decides to listen. This type of content is not about finding a box of gold hidden somewhere. It's about touching the essence of the invisible, about bringing about a change in perspective, a review of our certainties, a reunion with that which is above any theory. And as much as the story of the Ark is full of gaps, scattered clues, and conflicting versions, one thing seems increasingly clear. It still moves us because it represents something that no civilization wants to admit it has lost: the presence of God. And when we get closer to that presence, no matter how much we try to erase it or hide it, something inside us awakens, a type of spiritual memory, an impulse that makes us keep searching, keep questioning, keep waiting. Write it in the comments. I'm on this journey too. And let's move forward together towards the next step of this investigation that is far from over. If you've come this far, it's because something inside you also feels that this story goes beyond curiosity or theory. Perhaps it was an awakened spiritual memory, perhaps a sincere desire to understand what lies behind so many centuries of silence. And if at any point in this video you felt that this message was for you, then it was worth it. If this type of content makes you think, question, and connect in a deeper way with faith, history, and mystery, subscribe to the channel here, so we continue together on this journey, exploring layers that many people don't even know exist. Leave it here in the comments. I'm with you until the end, just so I know who was with me up until this point. It's always good to see someone walking to the deepest places of reflection. And if this video touched you in any way, leave a like, not out of obligation, but because it helps this message reach other people who are also looking for something more. There's a video here that complements everything we've seen so far. Click and stay with me there. There's more to be revealed.